currently offers a collection of 3 Android phones. So what are they and what's best for you? Well, the first one I don't have it anymore, so I can't show you it, is the Samsung Intercept. It came out last fall around late September, early October. It was pretty much a redo of an older Samsung Instinct that came out around 2009. So what's good about it? It had great build quality, a lot of metal construction. It had a very strong and sturdy QWERTY slider, and it had a nice solid snap when you opened and closed it. It also had an optical trackpad, which is great for scrolling web pages, but not that many applications or people use it. So the other phones which don't have it will not miss it. What was not so good about it? Well, I'll tell you this. It had an old CPU. Don't be fooled by its 800 megahertz speed. It did not have a separate GPU, so it couldn't even run Angry Birds that well to show you how slow it was. It even would be overtaxed on some simple tasks such as opening multiple tabs of web browsers. And it only had 256 megs of RAM. Another bad part of the phone was its screen resolution. It was small and skinny, and even the most basic apps were cropped off on the sides because it wasn't as wide as the standard Android resolution. Which is a problem for some, but for most day-to-day uses, it wasn't too bad. The keyboard was also a compact QWERTY style, which meant the spacebar was smashed in with a lower row of letters. It can get annoying, especially if you have big fingers. And forget about running Flash on the phone. It cannot handle Flash, it never could, it never will. Well, after a few months of having that, it took me forever to upgrade to 2.2. It was running Eclair, which is 2.1. It is now running Foil, which isn't that bad. It's actually a very good operating system. Its battery life is great. Around January, Virgin Mobile decided to release the LG Optimus V, which is pretty much the same thing of all LG line of phones. This is it right here. It's a pretty compact phone. Its main disadvantages, it doesn't have a slider, but it had a standard size screen resolution. This phone, while only had a 600 megahertz CPU, which seems slower than the Intercept, it was actually faster because it had a separate GPU. It also had 512 megs of RAM and, like I said before, a normal resolution screen, which meant nothing was cropped. It will play games very well. Just don't try to run Gun Bros or any other intense 3D games on it. The system cannot handle it. It has a real Android buttons on the bottom, none of the captain's buttons, which is actually great when your phone is locked in your pocket because you don't have to fit around and find the power key, which, believe it or not, in the dark, if you don't know which side you hold on the phone, can take some time to find. So what's not good about it? And a basic overview of the LG Optimus V. It has your Google search button here, your back button, your home button, and essentially the menu / right click button here. It has a standard headphone jack, 3.2 megapixel autofocus camera that actually does do pretty good macro shots. It has a speakerphone, it has your SD card slot, it has your camera, and your voice search activated button here, as well as a volume marker. As I believe a 3.2-inch screen. And now, what is not so good about this phone? Well, the bad is its build quality is actually relatively cheap. The battery cover always feels like it's about to come off, and if you hold the phone against your shoulder while talking on it, you can actually hear the battery cover squeak. The screen cover, it is not glass, it is plastic, and pretty cheap plastic at that. In fact, only after a few weeks, if you use the phone outside of your house and you take it in your office, you put it in your purse, it will scratch. They also, if you put the cover on it, if you know it and you've used one of those anti-scratch covers, it makes the touch screen a bit less responsive. The phone itself comes with a rubberized coating, and over time it tends to peel off. In a matter of weeks it started to peel off me, and eventually the phone can actually start to look pretty ugly. And while it is a somewhat newer CPU with a separate GPU unit, it's not the newest, and it has no flash. It will not support flash on this. It is one generation too old to handle it. Some occasions the phone does have some data hiccups, and you have to do a little dance to get the data to start working again. You're going to have to set the phone to airplane mode, clear all the temp files, reboot, and turn off airplane mode. Overall though, I am highly satisfied with the LG Optimus V. It's not quite a super phone, but it is a great introductory to Android and is good for all but the most super power users. It has pretty decent battery life if you use a battery management software and run a app killer. The problem with 2.2 and using app killers is that some apps are zombie apps, and no matter how many times you kill them, they like to come back to life. That's one of the problems with Android 2.2. It's not that bad, and one of the worst killers I could say is probably of all things AOL Instant Messenger. I personally wouldn't load that up on any Android phone. It is a huge battery killer. Which leads us to a phone that just came out with much hype on the online community for Virgin Mobile, which is the Motorola Triumph. On paper, this phone looks and seems amazing. It's got a 1 GHz Snapdragon CPU, a gig of RAM, a 4.1-inch glass screen. Some people say it's Gorilla Glass, but I cannot find a single real official source saying it's Gorilla Glass. Either way, it feels pretty strong and pretty robust. It's got a 5 megapixel camera with a flash, and I don't know why, but since when did a flash on a phone become a luxury item? It has a front-facing video camera so you can do video chat, and a micro HDMI out. Yes, it sounds great. It's pretty much got the same specs as an Evo, yet prepaid. No contract, and it has the Motorola name on it. But let's dig deeper into this phone. It has besides a beautiful screen, it's just overall a great phone, I personally think. But it's not as good as it seems if you use it for more than a few days. Now, the problems. First of all, Motorola did not make, nor did they engineer this phone. In fact, all they did was engineer the Motorola logo onto it. This phone is made by Huawei. It's known as a Huawei U9000 Idios X6. Virgin Mobile, back in April, was conducting a survey via their Pulse program, which the survey found out people wouldn't want a Chinese phone, but they loved the name Triumph. And they found out people did want to pay a premium for a quote-unquote super phone. Well, if you look into Huawei, I just can't say much. This company only a few years ago was selling fake Blackberries and fake iPhones. They're trying real hard to be an international player and a nice green company donating to charities. But their proven track record for their ethics reflects in the quality of their products. Remember a few years ago how Motorola had some Chinese employees stealing their R&D? Well, the company they sold it to was this company, Huawei. They also have copyright violations, whereas ZTE and Cisco are suing them. So, check. Let's see. Direct connections to the Chinese military? Absolutely they have that. Bribing and extorting potential customers? Yes. And after using this phone for about a week, I could label this phone as only one thing: a Maoist revenge on us. So what's so bad? As great as the phone screen looks, its touch responsive is, well, quite simply lagging. It sometimes doesn't align properly. It's sometimes just slow and doesn't really like to keep up with everything. I wish it would. I mean, it just looks beautiful. And if you actually compare the screens to the LG Optimus V, the V looks darker and the whites actually look brown if you compare them side by side in the dark. Well, that's not the only problem. For having a gig of RAM and a fast CPU, it seems sluggish. Yes, it's loaded with a lot of bloatware, and what I can only describe is most likely a poor compiling of the Android kernel. This phone, with running nothing in the background, having no extra apps loaded on from you, will average only about 150 megs of memory free. Where's the other Agent 50 going? And don't think for a second you can remove the bloatware. You cannot. And don't try to root the phone because its bootloader is locked down. The camera claims to be 5 megapixel, yet the picture quality seems actually lower than the LG Optimus V. Don't ask why, it just seems to have a lot more pixel distortion. And yes, they claim it can shoot 720p video from this, but it's running at around 15 frames per second, and the second you move it, it looks very wavy, and you just can't even stand looking at the video. The other biggest problem with this is the GPS. If you are pretty much like a person who walks and doesn't like carrying a GPS with you, a MP3 player with you, a phone with you, this is why we buy smartphones. Android's Google GPS system, Navigator, it's wonderful. Except for this phone, if you are out in a field with a perfect sight of line to the sky, it will take 25 minutes for this to lock onto a GPS signal. And that, while I'm indoors, I can't really show you that, it is absolutely horrible. If you're trying to drive and get directions, it's even worse. Just something as simple as trees or the glass on your windshield can take up to 45 minutes for this to lock into on it. If Mao was using the GPS in this phone to guide him to the shore during his long march during the Chinese Revolution, China today would still be a republic. That is how bad and unreliable the GPS is in this. So you may say you don't drive. You don't use the GPS. Big whoop. Well, the data and overall RF connectivity of this phone is horrible in all aspects. 3G is particularly bad. It for me loves to randomly go from 3G to 1G, not even 1G, 2G, 1x data several times a day. And for the most part, I will be stuck on 1x. And if you're really not lucky, you'll lose all data and voice connectivity. You must constantly scroll through airplane mode to off airplane mode to get rid of this. And if you don't know how to do that, you just hold down the power button and you can tap airplane mode, turn it on so it turns off the RF chipset, and then turn it back on, and you will maintain a data connection. Well, you'll get it back, not maintain it. So you can expect to miss many phone calls, emails, texts. It's just pathetic. And to show you how bad this phone is, and what a marvelous splendor of Chinese engineering this phone is, the USB port is installed upside down on this. I know USB is pretty new. It's only been on the market for 13 years or more, probably since 96 actually. So 15 years. And they still haven't quite got it right. I must say, just the kind of horrible engineering that goes into this. It's a beautiful looking package, but in the end of the day, it's a piece of crap. I would stay away from this phone. It is just that bad. And while the LG Optimus V has a small screen, less powerful CPU, not a super phone. If you really want an Android and you want a usable phone for Virgin Mobile, I would stick with this. Thank you.